we've talked about how to narrow down our client list and to those that might need cash flow advisory through, industries and then specific companies. But how do you actually determine, once you think you've got a few clients that you should look at, how do you actually look at them and say, yeah, these people need it? Good way to do it is to simply look at their balance sheet. It's probably a little bit of a different comment that you might expect from me, because I'm very focused on P&L and actual future looking cash flow. But the balance sheet is where things go to die. It's a really good frame of reference in terms of what has happened in the past. And so it's a very quick way to identify people that might be distressed, essentially. So if you see that somebody's relying on a line of credit quite consistently over time, that's definitely a good trigger, or a good flag, as opposed to a good use of a line of credit would be sporadic use. You need to go buy a piece of equipment or get through a lull. That would be a healthy use. But if you're essentially maxing out your line of credit all the time, it's just a term loan that's disguised as a line of credit. Low working capital. There's no magic ratio here. A healthy range, as everybody says, is 2 to 1. But essentially, if you have low working capital, it's probably an indication that you're trying to deal with some kind of cash flow sensitivities or struggles over time. See you, Mike. Thanks for hopping in. And low cash reserves. We're talking here about buffer and runway, for those businesses that maybe only have a month or two of kind of expenses in reserves, which is most businesses, to be honest. I think the average is 27 days for everybody. Low cash reserves are a really good example of being a little bit stressed out with cash flow. And they probably have high long-term debt loads, relatively speaking. So, not everybody can get traditional financing and term loans, but it is a really good indication that if they're, again, maxing these out and consistently going back for more debt relative to what their operations look like, it probably means that they're struggling with cash flow issues. So really all it says is that all of these things they're taking on a little more risk through debt than they might otherwise need to. And it's probably because they're compensating for some cash flow issues. And so, we've all done it and seen it. I've done it myself, where you keep carrying an additional cost longer than you want to, just in case, or because you've got some expectation that's going to happen in the future. Clients are the same. They'll keep that cost ongoing with the expectation that it will work out. And sometimes it doesn't. And then that just means that you've accumulated additional cost, and that has to be offset with either cash or debt or something. So really good telltale signs just by looking at the balance sheet. Of course, once you kind of have that framework in mind, you can go straight to the P&L, quickly back out some of the non-cash charges like depreciation and accruals. And if they consistently are, negative in terms of cash flow, that's a pretty good indication that they've got some issues that they probably need help with. Now, the interesting part is that your clients probably aren't going to talk to you about it in terms of, hey, my working cap's low. Hey, I've got negative cash flow. They probably aren't even aware of these issues. And even if they were, they probably don't know how to talk about them. And secondly, they might, even if they do know all of those things, they might not actually talk to you about them, a professional, simply because there's still a lot of people out there that look at accountants and bookkeepers as being very siloed and doing specific tasks. Bookkeepers only do data entry, accountants only do tax returns. And so they might not be aware of the value-added services that you're offering, depending on how you're marketing and positioning yourself. And so again, this goes back to, what your clients at the very beginning, talking about the accessibility to their books and them being primed and fully engaged, goes straight back to that. Your clients are in a great spot and very receptive to talking to you right now in terms of prepping everything for their tax returns. And so talking to them about what you can do for them at this point in time would be a really good idea. So things that your clients might say instead of talking to you about, pretty hard metrics, might be a little more nuanced. So they might say, hey, it's been a good year, but I'm not sure why my bank account's so low. They might say, hey, things are growing, but I wish I had more money to buy X, Y, Z. And they might even talk a little bit more emotionally. It was a hard year. I'm lucky that COVID supports were in place. Hey, it's a grind. I didn't think running my business would be so hard. Or, just straight up, I'm not sure how I'm going to make it. You know, in each one of those cases, those people are actually talking about cash flow issues. And so those are definitely key trigger points that you can use to, you know, essentially identify the client and help them out. So essentially, as professionals, we've got multiple different data points that we can look at. You know, we can look at the cash flow sensitivities, the commonalities that we discussed. We can look at the balance sheet and some of the symptoms or effects of troubled cash flow. And we can also look at the dialogue that we've had with our clients, the thoughts and the feelings that they convey to us. And if you know all of these, that will allow you to identify those people that need cash flow advisory.